Hi, everybody. This is Victor again. And now I'm with a very, very close friend that I was very lucky to meet here in Portugal. That is Bruce. Bruce is a friend that has been living in Portugal for a while. Just like me, he has a good knowledge about what is living in Portugal. And that is the main reason I asked him to do this kind favor that he always does when I ask him, such a good friend. So he knows about Portugal as an expat. So he moved to Portugal. He did some business here, and I would love you to get to know a little bit better about Bruce. And I know that this will be a nice talk, a very friendly talk with him. And now I will let my dear friend introduce himself, talk a little bit about his uh, journey here in Portugal. And we also do have some questions, that's some important questions to get to know him a little better. So, hi, Bruce. I
Hi,
would let
Victor.
you.
Hi, Victor. Now I can turn around and say the same nice things about you. You were one of the first people, to come out and support me when we started publishing Portugal Living magazine. You have been a good friend, and I would do anything that I can, to help you. So um, that's by introduction, by way of introduction, let me mention, and I don't know if this is in one of your questions, Victor, then we can just skip the question because I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction. Um, my spouse and I moved to Portugal 6 years ago from the United States. There were a variety of factors. We weren't comfortable living in the United States anymore. There were too many things going on: politics, crime, money. There were we weren't comfortable, and I had taken early retirement at 62, and my partner is able to work remotely, and so originally we were thinking of moving to Spain, but Spain, even though we've had a vacation home in Spain for 18 years, Spain makes it very, 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 very difficult to get there. Just for an example, and we'll contrast this with Portugal, for example. In Spain, if you go for what's called in Spanish, it's a jubilado. It's a type of residency. In Portuguese, it's called reformado. Okay, if you're going for a retirement visa. Okay, Spain says, number one, that the pension holder or the residencia holder, must make 28,000 euros minimum on my pension, and for each dependent, another 8,000 euros. So for the two of us, that's 36,000 euros. Now, I do not know many people in Spain or Portugal, for that matter, that have pensions of 38,000 euros a year. Another thing Spain said is that if we grant you a visa, a residencia of jubilado or reformado, you cannot work. Neither of you can work. You must not, and you cannot work remotely. You cannot work at all. One thing after another, it just became extremely frustrating for us. No matter what we tried to do, we just couldn't make, and we already had a house in Spain for 18 years. And so friends of ours said, Bruce, look at Portugal. We bought a place in Portugal 3 years ago. So this would have been 9 years ago, they told us. And we were very, very pleased and very pleasantly surprised to see whereas Spain seemed to put all of these stumbling blocks, making it difficult or impossible. Portugal welcomed us and wanted us there. And from our very beginning, our experiences with the Portuguese consulate and the Portuguese embassy in Washington, D.C., the people there were wonderful, and it just was relatively smooth. Portugal just wanted to see that we had enough money in the bank that and by enough money they call it the minimum wage. In other words, what a minimum wage earner in Portugal, which is pretty low. So we didn't have to have more than 8,000 euros, okay, to show and so forth. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I think that's the introduction of how I got to Portugal, and the fact that I straddle. I spend 2/3 of my time in Portugal and 1/3 of my time in Spain.
I see. Oh, Bruce, thank you so much for this nice introduction. And you don't worry about the questions. It's open space here, so
Good.
it's more like we speaking about the experience that you have moving to Portugal more than some kind of strict structure.
Yes.
And it's very interesting this your your moving to Portugal, moving to Spain before, and just um, so you know, I've been speaking to people who have this kind of a similar experience, mostly related to tax. They mentioned that living in Spain is very expensive, very expensive, and at least 4 or 5 years ago, Portugal was a country known for being affordable. And so nowadays we know many people that had some kind of similar route that you take moving to Portugal. It's interesting.
When I mentioned, some of the obstacles that Spain put up, I didn't even go into the finances other than, the initial. But another thing is that if you move to Spain, you must buy health insurance. It's a requirement that as long as you are resident in Spain, you must buy health insurance, and you can either buy the national health insurance. You can buy into the national health insurance plan, or you can buy private insurance. Now, that's another major contrast. Not that we try to take advantage of the system here, but it's nice to know that that Portugal has universal health care, that nobody is turned away. Nobody is turned away, even if you don't have your residency yet. And we know a number of people that have had major, major issues, and they were taken care of, no questions asked. And I mean, they asked at the end when they were released, well, where's the bill? Oh, we'll get it for you. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden something comes in the mail to them, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, here it is. And they open it up and it's like 31 euros. They've been in the hospital for 3 months and they're getting a bill for 31 euros. So, but I think there's something else that we should share with your viewers, because Portugal's rules and laws have changed from the time that we first became residents here to today. Like when we first became residents, you got 1 year residencia, and then you had to renew it for 2, and then you had to renew it for another 2. And then after a total of 5, then you could apply for permanent residency, or if you wanted to, you could simultaneously, although it's a totally different operation, apply for nationality, for Portuguese citizenship. Well, we got caught in the middle of a change. It changed that from 1 plus 2 plus 2, it now changed to 2 plus 3. And because of when our residencia expires, we needed to be here 6 years. It was just about 3 weeks ago that I finally got an appointment with the new staff.
Yeah.
I still don't know if it, even though I have asked for permanent residency, I've provided all of the documents that they require. But the gentleman who worked with me at the registro said was that well, he doesn't know if they're going to give me another 3 years or the 5 years, because permanent residency is not permanent. It's 5 years instead of 3. But what the point I wanted to make was about health insurance. When you come here, before you have your residency, okay, before you have that meeting in which you're granted residency, you have to come over with travel insurance, and there's certain limits. There's certain amounts that Portugal requires. Then it's up to you if you want to buy private health insurance or not. You have to have, I do believe that you have to have it throughout your first year of residency. And Victor, you would know better than I. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the first?
It is for the first year, yes.
Okay, and thereafter you're not required to have it. Okay, many people do choose to have it because of the system here. It's slow, you are on waiting lists, and especially people coming from other countries, they're used to making an appointment and seeing the doctor the next day if something bothers them. But one of the things that we learned in this whole decision to buy private insurance is that private insurance does not cover public facilities. In other words, hospitals are not covered. Now, let me give you 2 examples. Okay, when we lived in Alquench, which is a suburb of Castelo Blanco, we had a public hospital that was 5 minutes from Mardor. Okay. Now I'm almost 75. And not that I'm wishing anything, but if I, God forbid, something happened to me, if I had a heart attack or if I couldn't breathe or whatever, my partner would take me 5 minutes away to the local public hospital, as opposed to an hour away where I'd have to go to the private hospital in Covilla. In Vilabuim, where we are, which is a suburb of Elvas, okay, a really nice city on the border between Spain and Portugal. But here again, we have a large public hospital that's 5 minutes away. Okay, but insurance won't cover it because it's a public hospital. They insist that I have to go to Évora, which is an hour away. So, people, this is one of the things that, once you've made your mind up that you want to move to Portugal, these are some of the things that, among many others, that you want to look into and better understand. And that's where a group like yours, like Viv Europe, I mean, you have the facts at your fingertips rather than trusting what a Facebook group might tell you or what you might find by Googling or so forth. I mean, this is a question that people can ask you and your staff and get a clear, definitive answer very simply and very quickly. Anyway, I'm sorry for
No,
transgressing.
no, Bruce. Actually, I do love to hear you talk about your experience and giving, tips for people who are watching us, because I have gone through some kind of I wouldn't say a similar path, but what I saw is that yes, public hospitals here, at least those who I have been, are very good. And I've been, when I moved to Portugal, I went to Braga to live there for close to 6 years, I've been living in Braga, and now I moved to Vila Nova de Gaia. And I can see that that can have some kind of discrepancy on how good is the public system on your environment.
Hmm.
So in Braga, especially when I moved to Braga, it was pretty easy to go to public hospitals and be with a doctor in a matter of
Hmm.
minutes.
Hmm.
If I was in an emergency situation, I would go to the hospital and no queue, almost no, and I was with a doctor very easily. But here in Gaia, for example, it's another story because much more populated place, and you are kind of you were appointed a
Hmm.
médico de família, and
Hmm.
you want to go to the hospitals that are nearby. And I see that another important thing to consider before choosing the place to live is the how is your environment in terms of medical assistance.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's one of the important things that when you're, as you said, when you're deciding where you want to live, I hear people say, well, I can't stand the cold. Okay. All right. So I tell them, well, don't move up north because it's colder up there. They want to be on the coast. I said, okay, it's kind of expensive there. You have to be ready to factor in, the cost of living, which is higher there. But I would add to that also, you want to look at what healthcare facilities are available. And not just healthcare facilities, but government facilities. Because, for instance, you're going to need to deal with IMT, the Motor Vehicle Department. You're going to need to deal with finanzas. You're going to need to deal with, some people will need to deal with Seguridad Social. Other people are going to need to deal with, oh, well, the registro for your visas and your residency. And depending on where you live, it can be horrible. It can be a huge wait. People get very frustrated. I know people that, there's such a backlog now because of the changeover from CEF to this new entity that there's a backlog of thousands of people. And people have been on the phone. You cannot email them. Okay. They tell you do not email. You're not allowed to show up at the door. You have to make a phone,
Yeah,
you have to make an appointment on the phone. And I know people who have said to me that they have spent days
yeah.
simply calling, hanging up, calling, hanging up, calling, hanging up. So, yeah, getting back to housing, that's something that you want to consider. The larger the city, um, there are going to be a lot of benefits that you get if you're a city person. But then there are also some downsides there or challenges. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Challenges.
And this actually, Bruce, is a very important um, thing to talk about, and it leads me up to this question that is being an American and talking about bureaucracy as we are. If what were the most significant challenges that you think you had to go through when you moved to Portugal?
You need a lot of patience. Okay. You just need to be patient and to stick with it. Ultimately, we had to use, in the beginning, it was different. 6 years ago, it was very different. 6 years ago, there were not the number of people, the sheer magnitude of people that wanted to move to Portugal that has put a strain on the system. So, our experiences moving to Portugal, we had no problems getting our visa on time. We had no problems making an appointment with Seth for our residency. But now, uh, with renewing, after already renewing 3 times, this is the fourth time now that we're meeting with them. I had to have our lawyer do it for us, even though it says you can do it online. Um, what it says and what the reality is are two different things. I mean, we would go online and select automatic renewal. I mean, we've been in the system, but the system doesn't talk to each other. Okay, so what one computer system knows, the other one doesn't, and we would get messages that we're not eligible for that, or that there's no openings, or whatever. So ultimately, we engaged our attorney. Attorneys have access to tools and resources that we don't, and she was able to get us appointments. But there again, you want to talk about a frustration? We showed up in Porto Alegre, which is where the registro that was dealing with our residency renewals, and they had my name on it, but not my spouse's. And I said, well, how can that be? The attorney made the appointment for both of them. Here's her bill. It shows you 160 euros time two. That's what we paid. And he said, I'm sorry, here's the list. Your name is not on there. So we asked the official, could we call the attorney? Will you talk to our attorney? We didn't know that our attorney was in the middle of a funeral for her aunt. Her aunt had died, but she took the phone call and she argued with the man and said, I know what I submitted. Okay, there's a mistake on your end. No, señora, no, señora, no, doctora, as they would say, because, a lawyer is a doctora or doctor here in Portugal. And to make a long story short, our attorney maintains that he could have done it if he wanted to. He could have processed both of us at the same time, because most of the documents that they were looking for were shared. Same bank account, okay, same, everything that we brought there. We could have done it. So now she is once again trying to get another appointment just for him, and we have to make another round trip. So anyway, it goes with the flow. It's part of the Portuguese experience.
And this is something that makes me very frustrated at all, such as you, Bruce, because what I see here is that depending on the person that you are speaking to on the other side, it can be someone cheerful or someone who is not so happy, and it can change the outcome of your request like drastically. And there is even people who it's they try to guide their appointments to a specific, let's say, AIMA, which is the new SEF, because there they know that people are more friendly, they want to help, instead of just saying a big no and you have to deal with it. It's kind of, it's
Well, I don't know who to believe. Okay, on the one hand, the gentleman who helped was very friendly, and he was very nice, and he joked, and we laughed, and I spoke Portuguese. He laughed at my Portuguese, but yeah, because he didn't speak much English at all. But what his position was, the rules state that you must be on the list. And he showed me the list of names who had appointments for that day. And I was on the list. He wasn't. Now, on the same token, I can tell you that our attorney is a very, very busy person. And sometimes I think that we're not getting the benefit of her full attention, because during a meeting she might be on the phone, with 3 other people, all right,
yeah.
that come in because that's the way that, rather than hire additional people to help her to sort through it, she's doing it all herself. Okay.
Yeah.
And so something's got to give. So I don't know who's correct and who's not correct. All I know is that I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that kind of experience in Portugal. I just gave you the example of renewing my residencia. But there are things that you're going to find that, for instance, parking. You want to talk about something that's frustrating, okay? Parking. You will go see that many Portuguese people just drive into a lot, okay, and take up 3 spaces. And they take up 3 spaces, and they don't think anything about it. They don't think anything about it. So I'm mumbling under my breath, and I've seen people park in a handicap spot, and there's nobody handicapped in their car. There's no handicap sticker or what else. So there are things that you have to learn to go with the flow here in Portugal. It's a wonderful country. It's a beautiful country. It's a country that when you do have patience, you learn to calm down. A lot of people, especially more so from the UK, I believe, than from the USA, we come from countries that expect everything to happen immediately. All right. And when we want something, we want it to happen. You're going to be very frustrated at first, at least here, until you realize, I was extremely frustrated. I'm in a situation now where I sold a house, okay, and I could not reinvest the proceeds from the sale of that house into another house because I had already done that. All right. So my only option was, as I learned from doing research, my only option was to invest in a specific retirement account, and I could invest only the profits. All right. So I tried to find an accountant in Elvas, where we're living right now. And I did a Google search for, contabilista, computador, even English. And I got a list of about 8 people that didn't specialize just in companies, that dealt with particulares, individuals, as they call it here in Portugal. And I sent each one of them an email telling them, here, this is who I am. This is my fiscal situation in Portugal. This is my immediate, concern, because even though it won't be dealt with until next year's taxes, Portugal law says I have 6 months in which I must invest the proceeds if I want to go that way. So I contacted 8 different accountants here. And of the 8, by email, of the 8, only 1 replied. Now that totally freaked me out. And as a matter of fact, there are Facebook groups for people that privately, want to air grievances. And because if they say something in a general Facebook group about Portugal, they're shot down. Portugal is paradise. Portugal is this. Portugal is every. But no, there are things that that need. And basically, people were saying, well, that's just the way they do it in Portugal. They don't answer emails. What you need to do is go over there or call. And I said, and that led to a discussion in which more than 100 people participated. Some of them saying that, well, that's the Portuguese culture. You have to understand it if you're going to live here. And other people that said, no, there's big complaints about how much people earn in Portugal. But Portugal's got a phenomenal internet system. It's very fast. Everybody's got an email. Most professionals have websites and so forth. Okay. So don't tell me that it's not the nature of professionals to reply to an email, that I should go to them or I should call them. No. Okay. I might have to do that, by and large, but that's enough. That's another frustration. So let's leave the frustrations and go to the happy,
Yeah.
that.
But Bruce, really think that it's even more important to make people aware of the real Portugal, what they will face in the future, than just to say that everything's just flowers. Portugal is wonderful. And before we have this meeting, you mentioned that, okay, I will do the interview, but let's be real. Let's be real. And I think it's very important for
I
everyone
think
to
it
be.
is. I think it is, Victor, because there are too many people, as you said, that think it's all roses. And had they known beforehand, some of the challenges, well, if you're aware of them, then you know that they're coming and you can deal with them, or you can say, no, I don't want to live in a country that operates like that. I'd rather go, Mexico or, you know, Denmark or whatever. But yeah, I think it's important to know some of the frustrations that you're going to experience, and everybody does, and it's part of the learning experience, and it's part of the stories that you're going to tell every Christmas when you have your family together, and say, well, and everybody's going to outdo one another, saying, well, you think that's bad, this is what happened to me. But ultimately you learn to go with the flow here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree totally.